The battered shuttle screamed its protest as it pierced the toxic, ochre-hued atmosphere of Tartarus 7. Commander Kalen Vance, a man whose face was a roadmap of past conflicts and whose eyes held the weary light of too many battles, felt the familiar lurch in his gut. Disgust. It was a constant companion on assignments like these, especially those involving the Xylos Corporation. XY Corp. Their name was synonymous with exploitation, a blight on the galactic frontier. And this desolate penal mining colony, Tartarus 7, was their latest masterpiece of misery. Why was he here? A decorated officer of the Terran Defense Coalition, known for his unwavering adherence to protocols, yet a man secretly yearning for an end to the relentless cycle of conflict. This whole thing stank. As the shuttle's ramp hissed open, the acrid air assaulted his senses. Waiting for him was SLYTH, a XY Corp liaison whose reptilian scales seemed to shimmer and shift color with every obsequious nod and too-wide smile. Annoying. Commander Vance. A distinct honor. The Xylos Corporation extends its warmest welcome to Tartarus 7. We trust your journey was tolerable. SLYTH's voice was a silken rasp, each word dripping with false pleasantries that made Kalen's teeth ache. Before Kalen could offer a suitably curt reply, another figure emerged from the gloom of the landing bay. Warden Valerius. An imposing KRYLL, his skin like polished obsidian, his voice the grinding of tectonic plates. If SLYTH was falsely warm, Valerius was openly frigid. Commander Vance, Valerius rumbled, his multifaceted eyes unblinking. Your arrival is noted. We pride ourselves on facility efficiency and meticulous asset management here. Asset management. Kalen's internal disgust ratcheted up a notch. He cut through the niceties. My briefing mentioned a special project, Warden. I'm here to inspect it. SLYTH and Valerius exchanged a glance. Brief. Unreadable. What was that about? What shared secret festered between these two corporate ghouls regarding this project? It was a flicker, a momentary lapse in their carefully constructed facades, but Kalen filed it away. Something wasn't right. Of course, Commander, SLYTH interjected, his scales now a nervous shade of mottled green. This way. Our most significant undertaking. They led him down, deeper and deeper into the fortified underbelly of the main facility. Sterile corridors, buzzing with a low, oppressive thrum of energy that seemed to vibrate in his bones. The air grew colder, the metallic tang of ozone sharp in his nostrils. Finally, they reached a massive, reinforced door, a blast shield that could withstand a small tactical nuke. With a theatrical wave of his clawed hand and a chilling smile that didn't reach his dead eyes, Valerius announced, our most unique asset, Commander. Prepare yourself. The door hissed open. The chamber beyond was vast, bathed in the harsh, unforgiving glare of industrial lights. And in the center, bound by crackling, incandescent energy chains that hummed with barely contained power, was Lyra. A female Titan. Kalen had read the redacted files, seen the grainy, centuries-old pictographs. Nothing prepared him for this. She was immense. Easily 25 feet tall, her form humanoid yet undeniably alien, regal even in chains. Her skin was the color of polished amethyst, seeming to drink in the harsh light and reflect it with an inner luminescence. Her eyes, twin orbs like white nebulas, vast and ancient, fixed on him. They held no pupils, no irises, just an endless, swirling depth. She was completely nude, her long, midnight dark hair cascading around her shoulders and down her back, a stark, beautiful contrast to her luminous skin. And on that skin, Kaelin saw them, intricate, glowing markings that snaked across her limbs and torso, pulsing with a faint, rhythmic light. Tattoos. Scars. Or something else entirely. The shock that hit Kaelin wasn't fear. He'd faced down Kraken berserkers and sentient warships. Fear was a luxury he rarely indulged. No, this was something else. A sudden, unexpected surge of raw, unfiltered anger tightened his chest, followed by a bewildering, unwelcome pull of empathy. For this being. This magnificent, enchained creature. It made no sense. Valerius, oblivious, or perhaps reveling in Kaelin's stunned silence, let out a dry chuckle. Magnificent, isn't she, Commander? The last of her kind, we believe. The Xylos Corporation spared no expense in her acquisition. Worth a king's ransom, I assure you. More, even. Kaelin's hands clenched into fists inside his tactical gloves. His pristine, black Terran Defense Coalition military suit, usually a symbol of order and authority, suddenly felt like a suffocating cage, no different from the energy chains that bound the Titan. This wasn't an asset to be managed, or a specimen to be studied. He felt a cold certainty settle in his gut. This was an atrocity. And the unspoken question hung heavy in the sterile air. What was he, Commander Kaelin Vance, going to do about it? The warden's eyes, like chips of black ice, bored into him, waiting. Kaelin knew his next words, his next actions, could very well seal not only his fate, but that of the silent, watching giantess before him. A muscle twitched in Kaelin's jaw. I need to inspect the containment protocols. Alone. He kept his voice level, a parade ground bark that brooked no argument, though inside, a storm was brewing. What in the seven hells was HFY Corp doing? Warden Valerius's multifaceted eyes narrowed, the obsidian surfaces seeming to absorb the already dim light of the corridor. A low growl rumbled in his chest. But before he could voice a refusal, SLYTH, scales now a sickly yellow-green, quickly interjected, of course, Commander. Standard procedure. Warden Valerius, I'm sure Commander Vance's expertise will be invaluable in assessing the, long-term stability of the asset's confinement. The reptilian's smile was a gash of needle-sharp teeth. Valerius grunted, a sound like rocks grinding together. Very well, Commander. Restricted access. Study our asset to your heart's content, for now. His emphasis on "for now" was a clear threat, a promise of future interference. Curiosity, Commander. Or perhaps a professional interest in such unique biology. The KRYLL's smirk was a truly hideous thing. Kaelin ignored the barb, his face an impassive mask honed by years in the Terran Defense Coalition. He gave a curt nod. The guards will wait outside. As the heavy chamber door hissed shut, sealing Kaelin in with the silent giantess, an oppressive silence descended, broken only by the incessant, crackling hum of the energy chains. The air was cold, sterile. He took a slow breath, the words forming with a strange mix of military precision and a raw, unfamiliar hope. He moved cautiously towards the dais where Lyra was bound, stopping a respectful distance away. The sheer scale of her was breathtaking. He had to crane his neck to meet her gaze. Those eyes, like swirling white nebulas, they seemed to hold the wisdom of ages, and an unbearable sadness. He found his voice, surprised at its unexpected gentleness. I am Commander Kaelin Vance, he stated, keeping his hands open and visible. And I don't believe you're a beast. For a long moment, Lyra simply watched him, her massive head tilted slightly. The intricate, glowing markings on her amethyst skin, the star scrolls, he would later learn they were called, seemed to pulse a little brighter, a little warmer. Then, she spoke. Her voice was not a shout, not a roar, but a deep, melodious resonance that vibrated in Kalen's very bones, a sound like ancient music. Your eyes do not hold the greed or the fear of the others, Kalen Vance of Terra. The way she said his name, it was personal. Intimate, almost. They hold sorrow. Sorrow. Was that what she saw? He hadn't expected this. Not this clarity, this perception. How could anyone look at this magnificent being and see only in Basset? That first, hesitant exchange marked the beginning of their secret conversations. Days bled into weeks on the god's forsaken rock that was Tartarus 7. Kalen, citing endless, fabricated needs for structural integrity assessments of the primary containment field or security protocol reviews for high-value biological assets, found reasons, excuses, to visit her chamber daily. The XY Corp guards, initially wary, grew accustomed to his presence, their vigilance slackening into bored indifference. SLYTH, the reptilian liaison, often facilitated these visits, his scales shifting through a kaleidoscope of hues, his motives remaining stubbornly opaque. Was the creature simply an opportunist, currying favor? Or was there something more complex swimming beneath that ingratiating surface? Kalen couldn't shake the feeling that SLYTH knew more than he let on, that his obsequious demeanor masked a sharper intellect, and perhaps, a hidden agenda. He'd seen SLYTH, once or twice, lingering in a shadowed alcove far down the corridor after Kalen entered Lyra's chamber, his slick-pupiled eyes fixed on the sealed door with an unreadable expression. Reporting to Valerius? Or something else? The uncertainty gnawed at Kalen. Slowly, painstakingly, trust began to build between the human commander and the Jatitan. He learned her name was Lyra. Jatitan, she explained, meant children of the star heart, an ancient lineage from the distant Serpens Nebula. Her people, she recounted in her resonant voice, were peaceful navigators of the star lanes, artists and poets who sang to the cosmic energies. They had been decimated, she said, by a cataclysm they called the Great Silence. Her voice, when she spoke of it, was filled with a grief so profound it ached in Kalen's own heart. What was this great silence? A natural disaster? Or something, engineered? Could there possibly be other survivors, hidden caches of their knowledge, their culture, lost among the stars? Lyra didn't know, or wouldn't say. The mystery of it was a tangible thing in the cold, sterile room. She told him the glowing markings on her skin were indeed star scrolls, not tattoos, but living chronicles of her ancestry, the history of her people woven into her very being. They pulsed with a faint, inner warmth, Lyra observed, whenever Kalen was near, a soft light that seemed to respond to his presence. It was an unnerving, yet strangely comforting, phenomenon. How could that be? In turn, Kalen found himself sharing glimpses of Earth, its verdant beauty, its chaotic, vibrant cities, so different from the sterile hell of Tartarus 7. He even spoke of his own weariness with war, a confession he'd never voiced to another living soul. A TDC officer admitting to battle fatigue? Unthinkable. Yet, with Lyra, the words came easily. An unspoken understanding, a deep and profound bond, began to form in those stolen moments, a fragile connection woven from shared sorrow and a nascent, terrifying hope. He was walking a razor's edge, he knew. This was beyond insubordination, this was treason, by XY Corp's draconian laws. But the thought of Lyra, alone in this cold, cruel cage, he couldn't stomach it. One cycle, feigning a need to inspect the emitters of the energy field mere inches from her leg, he reached out. His gloved fingers brushed against the shimmering barrier, and then, through a momentary fluctuation he'd almost willed into existence, his hand passed through. He touched her skin. It was warm, smooth like polished river stone, yet incredibly resilient. A jolt, like a static discharge but carrying an emotional current, arced between them. Lyra gasped, a soft sound for such a colossal being, and her star scrolls flared, bathing the chamber in a brief, ethereal glow. Kalen pulled his hand back, his heart hammering. What was happening between them? This connection, it was impossible. Dangerous. And utterly undeniable. His technical mind, always working, always analyzing, had already noted critical flaws in Lyra's containment. The energy chains, for all their impressive, crackling display, drew their power from the main facility grid. Not an independent source. A significant vulnerability, if one knew how to exploit it. And Kalen was very, very good at finding and exploiting vulnerabilities. A desperate, audacious escape plan began to take root in his mind, a seed of rebellion against XY Corp, against Valerius, against the entire rotten system Tartarus 7 represented. He started spending his off-duty hours in the grimy, data haven frequented by disgruntled miners and low-level smugglers, ostensibly looking for recreational information, but actually cross-referencing Lyra's fragmented tales of Titan lore with obscure galactic databases. He found tantalizing, almost mythical references to their innate ability to manipulate energy fields, to commune with the very fabric of spacetime, if their star scrolls were fully active or somehow amplified. Could Lyra do that? Could she be more than just a prisoner? The universe, it seemed, was conspiring to force his hand. Warden Valerius summoned him. The KRYLL's office was as cold and imposing as its occupant. Your interest in the asset, Commander Vance, is becoming excessive, Valerius's voice dripped with unconcealed suspicion, his massive, clawed hands steepled on the dark metal desk. The corporation is growing impatient for tangible results from my study of her. Certain, more invasive procedures are being scheduled. To fully map her biological and energetic potential, you understand. Invasive procedures. Kalen felt a cold dread. He knew what that XY Corp euphemism meant. Dissection. Vivisection. The thought of them cutting into Lyra, violating her. It fueled his urgency, crystallizing his resolve. This wasn't just about duty anymore, or even empathy. This was personal. He needed more information. More leverage. He sought out SLYTH, the reptilian liaison, under the pretext of reviewing security rotations and emergency generator maintenance schedules. Just ensuring TDC protocols are compatible with XY Corps, you understand, SLYTH. Can't be too careful. He kept his tone casual, almost bored. SLYTH, his scales an unreadable mix of ochre and gray, was, as Kalen had half expected, surprisingly forthcoming. Almost too forthcoming. He provided schematics Kalen hadn't even asked for, highlighted specific older, less reliable power conduits, even mentioned offhand a long-forgotten geothermal vent system that supposedly led to the surface. Was SLYTH truly this inept? Or was the reptilian playing a deeper game, subtly feeding him information for reasons Kalen couldn't yet fathom? The ambiguity of SLYTH's actions was a constant, unsettling variable in his dangerous equation. Another secret, another layer of intrigue on this damned planet. What was the reptilian's endgame? Lyra, with her unnerving perceptiveness, sensed his inner turmoil during their next clandestine meeting. The star scrolls on her skin pulsed with a soft, worried light. You plan something dangerous, Kalen. Her voice was a low murmur, a gentle caress in the oppressive silence of her cell. I feel it in your spirit. It burns like a newly forged star. He could no longer hide it from her. He owed her the truth. He moved closer, his voice barely a whisper against the hum of the chains. I can't leave you here, Lyra. They plan to hurt you. Badly. He saw the flicker of understanding, of resignation, in those nebula eyes, and it tore at him. But, he continued, a spark of defiance igniting in his own gaze, there's a planetary maintenance cycle for the backup power generators tomorrow night. The entire grid will fluctuate for precisely 3 minutes. A small window, Lyra. But it might be all we get. Lyra looked down at him, this small, determined human who dared to challenge a corporate giant for her sake. A slow, breathtaking smile spread across her magnificent face. Her luminous eyes, for the first time since he'd met her, gleamed not with sorrow, but with a fierce, rekindled hope. A window, my little warrior, she resonated, her voice filled with a power that sent shivers down his spine, is all a star ever needs to shine through the deepest darkness. The air in the chamber crackled, not just with the energy of her chains, but with a palpable sense of anticipation. Tomorrow, they would either find freedom, or meet their end in the cold, uncaring depths of Tartarus 7. And as Kalen prepared to leave, his mind already racing through the final, desperate contingencies, he couldn't shake the image of Slyth's unreadable eyes, nor the chilling echo of Valerius's threats. The night ahead would be long, filled with shadows and whispers, and the terrifying, exhilarating promise of a dawn that might never come. What secrets did the great silence truly hold? And what would happen when a Titan star scrolls were, at last, unbound? The universe held its breath. The universe held its breath, or so it felt to Kalen Dance. He stood at the precipice of an action that would undoubtedly shatter his career, if not end his life. The cryptic message from Slyth, they know. Trap active. Echoed in his mind, a discordant note in the symphony of his meticulously crafted escape plan. Was it a genuine warning from an unlikely ally? Or a calculated deception, luring him into Valerius's clutches? There was no time to decipher the reptilian's true motives. Trust was a luxury. Action was a necessity. He had to proceed. But not blindly. Not anymore. What would you have done? Faced with a choice like that, with a life, no, multiple lives, hanging in the balance? Would you trust the snake, or the devil you know? He approached Lyra's chamber, every nerve thrumming, his combat suit sensors on high alert, sweeping for threats. The usual bored XY Corp guards were conspicuously absent. A small detail, perhaps, but in Kalen's experience, small details were often the heralds of very large problems. The corridor leading to her cell was too quiet. A dead, expectant silence that prickled his skin, raising the hairs on the back of his neck. This wasn't just routine, this was a stage, set for a final, bloody act. He rounded the final corner, his hand instinctively hovering near the pulse pistol holstered at his hip. And there they were. Warden Valerius, a monolith of obsidian KRYLL fury, flanked by a dozen elite XY Corp shock troopers, their heavy pulse rifles leveled, their expressions grim. Their armor, a matte black that absorbed the dim emergency lighting, made them look like specters of death. The air crackled with menace, thick and cloying like the atmosphere outside. So, Slyth, the scaly little opportunist, had been telling the truth. This was a trap. A very big, very obvious trap. Did Valerius think him a fool? Valerius's grating laugh, like boulders tumbling down a mountainside, echoed off the sterile, metal walls. Predictable, Commander Vance. So utterly, pathetically predictable. The KRYLL's massive head tilted, a gesture that might have indicated curiosity in another species, but in Valerius, it was pure, unadulterated contempt. Did you truly think you could outwit Xylos Corporation? Did you imagine we wouldn't notice your unprofessional attachment to our asset? His emphasis on asset was like a physical blow. Kalen kept his face a mask of feigned surprise, a slight, almost bored lift of an eyebrow. Years in the TDC had taught him the value of a good poker face, especially when staring down the barrel of a dozen pulse rifles. Just ensuring the asset is secure, Warden, he replied, his voice astonishingly calm, betraying none of the frantic calculations whirring in his brain. The EMP device he discreetly planted near the power conduit junction earlier that cycle, it was a long shot, a desperate, last-ditch measure. Could he trigger it before they opened fire? How fast were KRYLL reflexes, anyway? Your informant seems a bit jumpy, Warden. Perhaps you should invest in better sources. Or perhaps, consider that your security is so lax that a simple inspection causes this much theatricality. He needed to buy time. Even seconds. A tense standoff. The seconds stretched, taut as a garrote wire. Each pulse of the red emergency light seemed to mark a lifetime. Lyra watched from her dais, her luminous white eyes wide, fixed on Kalen. Her star scrolls, those intricate, glowing markings on her amethyst skin, were pulsing erratically, a frantic, silent language of distress that Kalen couldn't interpret but felt in the deepest recesses of his soul. He had to act. Now. Or never. There would be no other chance. Forget this, and you might as well sign Lyra's death warrant. Are you really going to let that happen? The stars are aligning, Lyra, he yelled, the prearranged verbal cue, a phrase they'd settled on during one of their hushed, desperate conversations. Simultaneously, his thumb, already positioned, flicked a concealed switch on his gauntlet. A high-pitched whine, almost subsonic, a sound that vibrated the fillings in his teeth, pierced the air for a nanosecond. Then, a wave of invisible electromagnetic energy washed through the chamber. The EMP. It was a massive gamble, a desperate, Hail Mary play, based on the schematics SLYTH had so carelessly provided, schematics that had highlighted a critical, almost laughably archaic vulnerability in the older power conduits feeding Lyra's restraints. Would it be enough? Had SLYTH been playing him, feeding him false hope? For a horrifying, heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Valerius sneered, a truly terrifying sight, raising a massive, clawed hand to signal his troops to open fire. Kalen braced himself for the searing pain of multiple pulse blasts. This was it. Then, the main lights in the chamber flickered violently, died, and plunged them into the crimson gloom of the emergency backups. The oppressive, incessant hum of the energy chains binding Lyra stuttered, coughed like a dying engine, and then, with a final, pathetic shower of sparks, went silent. They were down. The chains, her gilded cage, were just so much inert metal. With a roar that was less sound and more a shockwave of pure, primal force, a sound that shook the very foundations of the facility, Lyra shattered the now weakened physical restraints. Shards of metal, super-dense alloy designed to hold a god, exploded outwards like shrapnel. But she didn't just break free, an almost impossible, unbelievable thing happened. As the containment energy fields collapsed around her, she seemed to draw power from them, to absorb their dying energy into herself. Her star scrolls, those intricate patterns of light, blazed with an intense, almost blinding white light, transforming the delicate script into raging rivers of molten starlight. Power, raw, untamed, and utterly magnificent, radiated from her, pushing back the oppressive gloom. Kalen felt the hair on his arms stand on end. Is this what Valerius had wanted to study? This terrifying, magnificent energy manipulation? The sheer, unadulterated power of a Titan unleashed? He suddenly understood XY Corp's obsession. And their terror.